The music box. That demands an encore, a true horror story. The fire was a dying sun, its embers casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock the 5 figures huddled around it. The air in the clearing was cold and still, smelling of pine and damp earth, and the only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the distant, lonely call of a night bird. A girl named Chloe pulled a worn, gray wool blanket tighter around her shoulders, her eyes reflecting the orange glow. She reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out a small object, holding it up for the others to see. It was a vintage 8-ball music box, the kind with a tiny ceramic ballerina that spun when the lid was opened. The white paint was chipped, and the ballerina's face was worn smooth, featureless. "This story," Chloe began, her voice a low murmur that was swallowed by the surrounding silence, "is called The Tale of the Unheard Melody. It's not about a ghost you see, but a song you feel. In your bones. This story is about my friend, Lila. Lila was a dancer. She lived and breathed movement, feeling the world through rhythm and grace. Her sanctuary was the old, abandoned Orpheum Theater on the edge of town, a beautiful, decaying relic of a bygone era. It had been closed for 30 years, after a devastating fire during a performance of Swan Lake that had claimed the life of the theater's star ballerina, Isabella. The official report cited faulty wiring, but the town's whispers spoke of a jealous understudy, of a curse, of a performance so perfect it invited a tragic end. Lila's dance studio was doing a historical project, and she had gotten special permission to photograph the Orpheum's interior for inspiration. She went alone one afternoon, the massive, rusted keys to the stage door heavy in her hand. The inside was a cathedral of dust and forgotten dreams. Velvet seats were moth-eaten and rotting, and the grand curtain hung in tattered, blackened shreds. The air was thick with the smell of old ash and damp velvet. But to Lila, it was beautiful. She could almost hear the echo of applause. On the stage, in a pile of discarded props, she found the music box. It was tucked inside a small, scorched jewelry box that had the name Isabella engraved on it. Lila wound the key. It was stiff, but it turned. She opened the lid. The tiny ballerina did not spin. No music played. Disappointed, she closed it and slipped it into her bag, a morbid souvenir. That night, in her room, she tried again. She wound the key until it wouldn't turn anymore. She opened the lid. The ballerina remained still. But this time, a sound emerged. Not a melody, but a single, sustained, sour note from a music box cylinder, warped and distorted by time and heat. It was a painful, grating sound that made her teeth ache. And then, as the note hung in the air, she felt it. A deep, resonant thump through the floorboards of her room. A vibration. It was followed by another. And another. It was the unmistakable, heavy rhythm of a bass drum, keeping time. A rhythm that matched the pounding of her own suddenly terrified heart. This was the first scary scene, the solitary, unsettling note, and the phantom percussion that answered it. A sound felt rather than heard, a vibration that seemed to come from the very foundations of the world. Lila slammed the music box shut. The drumming stopped. She told herself it was the plumbing, the old house settling. But the next day, at practice, she found her body moving to a rhythm no one else could hear. During a complex series of pirouettes, she heard that single, warp note again, clear as day in her mind, and her body contorted on its own, executing a move that was not in the choreography, a desperate, agonized-looking arch of the back. Her instructor praised her for her emotional interpretation. Lila felt cold. The music box began to call to her. She found herself winding it compulsively, just to hear that one awful note, just to feel the answering drumbeat in her soul. She started spending her evenings at the empty theater, drawn to its stage. She would play the note, and the empty auditorium would seem to fill with the feeling of an audience holding its breath. She began to practice there, her movements becoming more fluid, more precise, but also stranger, more archaic. She was dancing better than she ever had in her life, but it didn't feel like her dancing anymore. The second terrifying scene happened during one of these solo rehearsals. The sun had set, plunging the theater into deep shadow. Lila had been dancing for hours, lost in a trance. She played the music box's note. The phantom drumbeat answered, louder this time. And then, a new sound joined it. The faint, whispery sound of string instruments tuning, discordant and ghostly. Lila spun and leaped across the stage, her body a puppet on invisible strings. She caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of the dark, dusty orchestra pit glass. But it wasn't her reflection. The figure moving with her grace was wearing a scorched, white tutu. Its face was a blurred smudge of featureless porcelain, like the ballerina on the music box. She stumbled to a halt, gasping for breath. The sounds cut off. The reflection showed only her own terrified face. But on the stage floor around her, in the thick dust, were a set of footprints that were not her own. Smaller, daintier, and they ended abruptly in the center of the stage, as if someone had vanished into thin air. She tried to get rid of the music box. She threw it in a dumpster. The next morning, it was sitting on her pillow, the lid slightly ajar. She buried it in the woods. That night, she woke up to the sound of scratching at her window, and there it was, on the outside sill, covered in dirt. It had come back. It had chosen her. The climax came on the anniversary of the fire. A pressure had been building in Lila for days, a frantic energy. She knew she had to go to the theater. She had to perform. She wore a white leotard, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. The stage was waiting. The air was electric with silent anticipation. She placed the music box on the floorboard center stage. She wound it. She opened the lid. The single, warped note screeched into the silence. And the Orpheum Theater came alive. The phantom orchestra erupted into the full, tragic score of Swan Lake, not as a faint whisper, but as a deafening, overwhelming wave of sound. The rotten grand curtain rose on its own, billowing with unseen movement. The ghost light, the single bare bulb that always burned on stage, flared blindingly bright, becoming a spotlight that pinned her in its glare. And she was not alone. The seats were filled. Not with people, but with shadows. Tall, thin, featureless silhouettes that sat perfectly still, watching. The air grew hot and thick with the smell of smoke and ozone. Lila's body began to move, but it was no longer her own. She was a marionette, her limbs executing a beautiful, heartbreaking, and terrifying dance of swan song and death. She was dancing Isabella's final performance. Then, she saw her partner. From the wings, a figure emerged. It was tall and gaunt, its body made of swirling, condensed smoke and shadows, wearing the tattered remains of a prince-like costume. Its face was a smooth, polished white mask, its expression one of tragic sorrow. This was her partner. This was the entity that had composed this tragedy. It glided toward her, its movements a grotesque parody of dance, and took her hand. Its touch was freezing cold, yet it burned. It began to lead her in the dance, its strength immense, its movements dictating her own. They spun and leaped across the stage, and with every move, Lila felt her own life force, her own identity, being drained away, poured into this recreation of a decades-old tragedy. She was becoming the swan. She was becoming Isabella. She was dying to complete the story. The third and most terrifying scene was this full performance for an audience of shadows, partnered with a smoke and ash phantom, her body and soul being consumed to fuel a ghostly encore. With the last of her will, as the phantom prince dipped her backwards towards the stage floor in the dance's tragic finale, Lila focused not on the mask, but on the music box, still screeching its single note nearby. With a final, desperate burst of energy, she kicked out, her foot connecting with the small object. It skittered across the stage, the lid slamming shut. The music stopped. The spotlight died. The audience of shadows vanished. The phantom prince dissolved into a cloud of ash that fell to the stage in a silent heap. Lila collapsed, sobbing, alone in the sudden, profound silence of the dark theater. She had broken the cycle. She had stopped the song. Chloe lowered the music box. The fire was now just glowing embers. The story was told. The members of the storytelling circle sat in stunned, horrified silence. Lila never danced again, Chloe said, her voice flat. She moved away to a city with no theaters, no ballet. She works in an office now. She says she likes the silence. She thought she'd shattered the melody for good. She held up the music box. This arrived on my doorstep this morning. No note. No return address. She slowly, deliberately, wound the key on the bottom. The sound was loud in the silent clearing. She opened the lid. The tiny, featureless ballerina did not spin. But from within the box, that single, sustained, warped note screeched out into the night air. It hung there, ugly and dissonant. And from the deep, dark woods surrounding their clearing, far away at first, then closer, came an answering sound. Not a drumbeat this time. It was the sound of slow, measured applause. Chloe snapped the lid shut, her face pale. The woods fell silent once more. "It's not a finale it wants," she whispered, staring into the terrified eyes of her friends. "It's an encore. If you listened until the final curtain call, then you've already heard the first note. The melody is stuck in your head now, isn't it? The performance is never truly over." Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story that awaits its audience. Your subscription is a seat in our private theater. It ensures you won't miss the next tale that demands an encore. What do you think the next movement sounds like? Let us know in the comments. What song would you never want to hear from a music box in the dark? Your ending might just become part of the score. If this story left you listening for applause in the silence, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that this performance deserves a wider audience, and helps other listeners find their way to our stage. But be careful what you listen for next. Some songs don't know how to end. Until next time, keep the lights on.